Hey everyone, it's Saoirse, and we're back in the kitchen because I want to talk about another Sally Rooney book, and I feel like a lot of scenes take place in kitchens or around food. This is Conversations with Friends, and this was published in 2017. I'll read you the back. Frances is a cool-headed and darkly observant young woman, vaguely pursuing a career in writing while studying in Dublin. Her best friend is the beautiful and endlessly self-possessed Bobby. At a local poetry performance one night, they meet a well-known photographer, and as the girls are then gradually drawn into her world, Frances is reluctantly impressed by the older woman's sophisticated home and handsome husband, Nick. But however amusing Frances and Nick's flirtation seems at first, it begins to give way to a strange and then painful intimacy. Written with gem-like precision and marked by a sly sense of humor, Conversations with Friends is wonderfully alive to the pleasures and dangers of youth and the messy edges of female friendship. Okay, I like this one quite a bit more than Normal People, which I didn't expect. I thought, oh, I really liked Normal People. Didn't know if I was going to be into this plot that's described on the back. I'm glad I gave it a chance because, as it turned out, it's not the plot at all that I resonated with. It was the narrator of Frances, and this one is in first person, so that makes it more appealing to me than Normal People. I love a first-person, character-driven story, and unfortunately I related a lot to Frances and her many issues, so I felt very seen in this book, and there were a lot of lines that I thought, I wish I had written that line. It was not what I expected, and I sympathized with everybody in this book pretty much except for Bobby. I don't know if that's a controversial opinion. It seemed pretty obvious to me that she's a toxic friend. Everybody's got their issues in this book, but I didn't feel like there was much redeeming about her. Okay, I'm going to pull out some things that I liked in here, that I resonated with. There's a lot about dissociation, again, in this book, as there was in Normal People. Okay, Frances is narrating. She says, at any time I felt I could do or say anything at all, and only afterward think, oh, so that's the kind of person I am. So right away we're getting this look at her disconnect from herself, and that's only going to become way more amplified throughout the book. And toward the beginning she has this pain that she thinks is period pain. She says, at the same time I was exhilarated by the seriousness of my pain, like it might change my life in an unforeseen way. Now, this is an important bit to me because it kind of paints Frances as a chaos addict, a light chaos addict, which I definitely relate to. I relate to the dissociation, feeling very disconnected from yourself and your life and your surroundings, kind of just watching everything happen. And then so when something does happen, it has to be wild. It has to be extremely painful or emotionally charged, something really amplified, because that's the only thing that you can feel. Which sucks, but that's dissociation for you. I think that's why I get so, like, my heart starts going when there is chaos. I'm like, oh, this is something real. Like, this is something I can get into. When most of the time I'm just, there's a veil up between me and the world. I hadn't been kidding with Philip about not wanting a job. I didn't want one. I had no plans as to my future financial sustainability. I never wanted to earn money for doing anything. I'd had various minimum wage jobs in previous summers, sending emails, making cold calls, things like that, and I expected to have more of them after I graduated. I certainly never fantasized about a radiant future where I was paid to perform an economic role. Sometimes this felt like a failure to take an interest in my own life, which depressed me. On the other hand, I felt that my disinterest in wealth was ideologically healthy. I'd checked what the average yearly income would be if the gross world product were divided evenly among everyone, and according to Wikipedia, it would be $16,100. I saw no reason, political or financial, ever to make more money than that. So I liked this bit because, like in Normal People, where I think it was Marianne saying that she doesn't ever want a job, um, or how ridiculous it is that we have to. She was saying how ridiculous is it we have to exchange our minimal time on this earth for the man-made construct of money, and so the same thing here. So clearly, Sally Rooney's got a thing about that, and I totally relate, and I love it. It is entirely depressing. Yeah. Try not to rant about anything too long here. At this point, I felt a weird lack of self-recognition, and I realized that I couldn't visualize my own face or body at all. It was like someone had lifted the end of an invisible pencil and just gently erased my entire appearance. This was curious and actually not unpleasant, though I was also aware that I was cold and might have been shivering. That's one of those lines where I wish I'd written it, because it's such a great description of dissociation. The idea of somebody just gently erasing you, and you can't picture yourself, and you're kind of aware that there are things, there are sensations in your body, but you're not really in your body, so it all feels like it's happening to somebody else, or that it doesn't matter because it's all so fleeting. Really astute observation. Frances has this difficult relationship with her father because she just doesn't really feel anything for him and feels guilty about that. And he's got issues and he's depressed, and she struggles seeing him go through that. During his periods of contrition, he tried to make conversation with me about school, and I had to choose between humoring and ignoring him. Humoring him made me feel dishonest and weak, a soft target. Ignoring him made my heart beat very hard, and afterward I couldn't look at myself in the mirror. Also, it made my mother cry. So I wrote, me. This vacillation between being true to yourself and avoiding confrontation. I live with that battle every day. I typically end up being dishonest. The first thing she says, humoring him made me feel dishonest and weak. I usually end up going that route because the confrontation with the heart beating very hard and not being able to look at yourself and just all the feelings that come along with confrontation, I can't handle it. In this case, it's the opposite of confrontation. Ignoring is her version of being true to herself, and it causes emotional ramifications. And yeah, I wish that I was stronger in standing up for myself, but God, I hate confrontation. And I don't know if that's from being like a people pleaser or being afraid of abandonment. I have to keep people in my life that I don't even like because I'm so afraid of anybody leaving or disliking me. Talked a bit about this in the last book. Okay, so Frances has a lot of endless hopelessness going on, which I also related to. She's pulling knots out of her hair with her fingers so hard that the little broken strands of hair tangled and snapped out. I thought probably they won't even be there, and I'll have to come home and sweep up all these strands of hair and feel terrible. Probably nothing of import will happen in my life again, and I'll just have to sweep things up until I die. Wish I'd written that line. That's a great little snippet of what it feels like to be the kind of depressed where you just think nothing is ever going to change. In the sense that I get very tired of routine, and at the same time I absolutely need routine. So I'll come up with a really good routine one week and I'll be feeling like, oh, I'm not mentally ill anymore. I've got this routine. I'm going to the gym at the same time, doing these things that I've written down that I'm going to do, And then the next week comes around, and I go, oh, this is boring. I have to do what I did last week. So I don't know like where I thrive more, with routine or with variety. It really needs to be both. So just the image of sweeping things up until you die, that is, I think that a lot. Like, I am gonna do so many dishes every day for the rest of my life, and I'm gonna vacuum, and you always have to vacuum again. It's never ending, and then you die. Okay. So now she's having this pain again that she thought was her period before, and it's starting to really scare her. I had never seen anything like this before, and it scared me so badly that the only comforting idea I could think of was, maybe it's not happening. I kept returning to this thought every time I felt myself starting to panic, as if going insane and hallucinating an alternate reality was less frightening than what was really going on. Maybe it's not happening. I let my hands tremble and waited to start feeling normal again, until I realized that it wasn't just a feeling, something I could dismiss to myself. It was an outside reality that I couldn't change. The pain was like nothing I had ever felt before. This is one of the dangerous things about dissociation, because sometimes I think people use physical pain to kind of snap themselves back into reality. And in this case, she's not doing it on purpose. It's outside of her control. And if you're somebody who uses dissociation as a coping mechanism, being awakened in that way to reality is terrifying, because this is something suddenly that you can't just go into your little lair of like, oh, nothing matters because nothing's real and this isn't really happening, which I live in pretty regularly, or used to a lot more in the past. You can't do that when you're having a serious medical problem that needs attention. And I had something like this recently where I slept on my stomach and woke up and had this horrible pain in my neck. And then over the following days, it became the most intense headache. It can't even be described as a headache. The worst head pain I've ever felt, and a like stabbing at the base of my skull. And at the time I had to drive from North Carolina to Florida, so for like 11 hours by myself, and I thought, like, if I should just ignore this, nothing's happening, but then I was like, you could be having an aneurysm or something. So when I did make it home with the help of my mother, who met me part of the way up there, I had to go to the ER. And you know how many times in my life I've said, I probably should go to the hospital, and then I don't, because I'm so good at just being like, this isn't happening. And with every situation, with everyone, not just me, just if we just ignore this, you know, it'll probably go away. This wasn't going away, and so I went to the hospital. First ER trip in my life, and they didn't really have an answer, but I got pain meds, and they did a CT scan, and most people think it was a compressed nerve from sleeping on my stomach with my head turned violently in one direction. So now I'm afraid to sleep on my stomach, and that's the easiest way for me to fall asleep, so that sucks. But just thought I'd tell that little story to talk about the dangers of ignoring reality when you're somebody that does that regularly. Also, this was during a hurricane. I went to the ER when everybody in Florida was trying to get out because of the hurricane. And then I spent the next few days in bed in immense pain with the wind howling and like tearing my trees down and stuff. It was really surreal. See, everything is surreal to me. It's not real, even when it is happening and it's that intense. Okay. So here's an example of her spiraling. A searing anxiety developed inside me at this thought, in the same form it always took no matter what external stimulus triggered it. First, the realization that I would die, then that everyone else would die, and then that the universe itself would eventually experience heat death, a kind of thought sequence that expanded outward endlessly in forms too huge to be contained inside my body. Okay. yeah, so her thoughts are spiraling at this point. Um, Relatable. That is when anxiety just gets its claws in you, and it feels like, it's beyond the hopelessness of depression. It's the absolute certainty that these terrible things are going to lead to this terrible thing, and it's just going to spiral out of control until everybody's dead, and nothing good will ever happen. It's like, I don't know, my depression and anxiety work together in a very fun way. They like to feed off of each other, and yeah. In the mirror on the other wall, I could see my left hand, my free hand, moving nervously up and down the seam of a pillowcase. I dropped it and watched it lie dead on the quilt. So that's just another good image of dissociation, where you don't even realize you're doing something until you see yourself in a mirror, and then this image of her hand lying dead on the quilt. It has no more life in it the way that she sees it. She doesn't see it as attached to her. Okay, what is this? Oh, here's something about Bobby. It was more that Nick's sympathy seemed unconditional, like he rooted for me regardless of how I acted, whereas Bobby had strong principles that she applied to everyone, me included. I didn't fear Nick's bad judgment like I did Bobby's. He was happy to listen to me even when my thoughts were inconclusive, even when I told stories about my own behavior that showed me in an unflattering light. So just part of the book where I just think Bobby is toxic. She's not good to her friends. And, calling Frances her best friend and treating her the way that she does, she constantly puts her down. And if you watch the show, it's so painful to see Frances just apologizing for things that there's no apology warranted, but because Bobby is being so mean to her, and Frances is so conditioned to this, and she's naturally somebody who apologizes for her very existence. Relatable. She just lets Bobby walk all over her, and I kept thinking Bobby's gonna have this character arc where she realizes that she's been so awful, and I feel like maybe we were supposed to think that happened at a certain point, like toward the end when they reconcile, but I did not feel anything genuine about it. It just was like, oh crap, now Frances is gonna get wrapped up in Bobby's toxic behavior again. That didn't change. And in a way, I guess that means the book is very realistic. What does this say? Oh, denying her nature. Now I was afraid that Nick was right. I isolated myself from criticism so I could behave badly without losing my sense of righteousness. So here's the thing, she also believes everything bad that people say about her. Because she has no sort of self-image in her own head, no idea who she really is, she just believes all the things that people say that she is. But that's an interesting observation. If you keep yourself away from criticism, you don't allow it to happen. Like she says, I thought of myself as an independent person, so independent that the opinions of others were irrelevant to me. But that can just be a way for you to get away with doing whatever you want, and not having to feel like you're wrong about anything. So here she's written a story, and somebody wants her to send it. She says, I sent her the new story without even looking it over again for typos. The world was like a crumpled ball of newspaper to me, something to kick around. I love that line. Because that's a great way to say she has stopped caring. She has no more interest in giving a crap about her life or the world or her place in the world, what she's doing to quote unquote better herself. When you're dissociated, it does feel like nothing matters and there are no consequences to anything. So this image of kicking around the world like a crumpled ball of newspaper is perfect. Because you just truly feel like there's not going to be a consequence for your actions, so why not do whatever? Bobby's teeth were chattering faintly. She didn't look at me when I came in, which gave me a weird sensation of disappearance, like I was already dead. Another great line about dissociation. And especially with Frances, who lives so much, she like hangs on this opinion that Bobby has of her. It matters so much to her what Bobby thinks, so she ceases to exist if Bobby doesn't see her. Another bit about dissociation. We chatted, I don't remember about what. I had the sense that my voice was coming from somewhere else, like a small radio I kept in my mouth. Now that's a classic symptom of dissociation, depersonalization, where your voice coming out of your mouth doesn't feel like your own. And that is a big symptom of my dissociation. And it's funny that I do videos where I talk because I hate hearing myself, because it doesn't feel like myself. I hung up the phone. After that, I put some cold water on my face and dried it. The same face I had always had, the one I would have until I died. Just a little bit of reluctant acceptance there. You know, kind of more than acceptance, resignation to life and what it is. I was really smiling then. I knew he could hear my smile when I said, "You don't sound glad." He sighed again, a weak sigh. I felt like he was lying on the floor and I was tearing his body apart with my smiling teeth. I love that image because here you can see her having these violent thoughts, which is part of her self-hatred, is she feels like she's this monster. And not that she actually would tear somebody apart with her teeth, but that's like who she sees herself as, and I felt that. Like you just feel like you're evil sometimes. He hung up. I closed my eyes and felt all the furniture in my room begin to disappear like a backward game of Tetris, lifting up toward the top of the screen and then vanishing, and the next thing that would vanish would be me. Another fantastic image that I wish I had written. Just everything slowly going upwards until you disappear too, as if you never existed. I was a very autonomous and independent person with an inner life that nobody else had ever touched or perceived. She's saying she was thinking about all the things she had never told Nick, starting to feel better, as if her privacy extended all around her like a barrier protecting her body. That's a coping mechanism of self-preservation. You think if you don't reveal anything about yourself, then in a way you don't exist because you've never revealed a single thing about who you are, so how could you exist? And it just protects you from other people hurting you. Gradually, the waiting began to feel less like waiting and more like this was simply what life was, the distracting tasks undertaken while the thing you are waiting for continues not to happen. Another sad bit of resignation there. So here, she's kind of spiraling towards a disaster. She's in a church, and she's really like thinking hard about the church and how it was made and who did all of this work. Me, all the clothing I wear, all the language I know, who put me here in this church thinking these thoughts? Other people, some I know very well and others I have never met. Am I myself or am I them? Is this me, Frances? No, it is not me. It is the others. Do I sometimes hurt and harm myself? Do I abuse the unearned cultural privilege of whiteness? Do I take the labor of others for granted? Have I sometimes exploited a reductive iteration of gender theory to avoid serious moral engagement? Do I have a troubled relationship with my body? Yes. Do I want to be free of pain and therefore demand that others also live free of pain? The pain that is mine and therefore also theirs? Yes, yes. And then she says, when I opened my eyes, I felt that I had understood something, and the cells of my body seemed to light up like millions of glowing points of contact, and I was aware of something profound. Then I stood up from my seat and collapsed. So she's not doing so well at this point. Because she's experiencing this extreme physical pain while her mental pain is amped up. Because the thing about physical pain is if you're already a person, especially if you're already a person with depression and anxiety or dissociation, having physical pain is going to make your mental symptoms go through the roof. Obviously. You know, like I already have depression and anxiety, and I also live with chronic pain. And it sucks. Because when it works up so bad that I can't do the things that I typically would do to keep my mental levels stable, when those physical things are taken away from me, of course I'm going to spiral and feel even worse mentally. Because connecting with and moving your body is so important when you're trapped in your brain. So when you've also got physical pain that keeps you from doing that, it's a nightmare. So of course she's doing terribly at this point. But then she finds out, she does get a diagnosis of endometriosis, which I don't have experience with. It sounds absolutely terrible. But she finally knows what is wrong, why she's having all this pain. She's talking to Philip at this point. We went out for coffee together during the week, and he told me that Sonny had offered him a part-time job with real wages. I told him that I wasn't jealous, which disappointed him, though I was also worried it was a lie. I liked Sonny. I liked the idea of books and reading. I didn't know why I couldn't enjoy things like other people did. So painful, because she's lucid enough to know what she's missing, but she's also so mentally ill that the idea of taking part in things that she probably would enjoy doesn't excite her. So she just wonders, why can't I be excited about the things that I know I like, and other people are excited about the things that they like? Why can't I be like those people? Me. Okay, that's the last thing I'm going to read from here. But yeah, I really loved it. And as you can see, I didn't even talk about the fact that Frances is having an affair with Nick throughout the book, because for me it was not about the plot at all. It was just Frances was a very accessible character, and this situation that she's in with Melissa's husband is just a vehicle for us to see what's going on inside her. You know, what draws a very young woman to have an affair with a married man who's much older, and married to somebody that, you know, she kind of respects to begin with. What makes that happen? I feel like in her character we see she's got issues from childhood. She's got, you know, a lot of self-hatred and this people-pleasing mentality, which she has learned a lot from Bobby. So she'll just sort of go along with whatever people want from her, and will do anything to be loved. And in a lot of ways, she's very similar to Marianne from Normal People. So yeah, I think this affair is just one of many kind of messy things that might happen in her life. And that's why, again, she gets me with these unexpected endings, because you think by the end of this book that she's learned that she doesn't need this relationship, which is also in a way toxic. But in the end, she decides to see him again. Um, and Nick is somebody who has dealt with very serious depression, so I think they relate to each other a lot. But it's just, I don't know. It's an interesting look at how we see relationships and how monogamy is not always the answer. And if you are somebody who can work out a non-monogamous relationship and have it be good and safe for everyone, that's great. Yeah, so we're just, I don't know, it's this modern look at how we relate to each other and how we could possibly have relationships that are outside the norm. Um, and again, I watched the show. There's a 12-episode show on Hulu, and the show was better, more gripping than Normal People, but still like so similar to the book that you don't really need to watch it if you read it. Um, Nick was like the only casting I didn't really understand. The casting was pretty good, especially for Francis. Um, I just wasn't feeling like Nick's character was right. But yeah, that's all my thoughts. Obviously, this book really made me like delve deep into my dark issues, and I love that. But if you find that you relate to a book in that way, like please practice self-care after. Maybe read something that is a little bit lighter for you. Um, and that's it. So I will see you all next time. Thank you for watching and happy reading.